Okay. Oh.
Oh.
Oh, there y'all are. Hello, welcome. Hola, people. Hola, hi, hello,
Hey.
welcome. All right, okay. So tonight we're actually gonna have a lot of fun. If you have any questions about the topic, or the topics, feel free to utilize the chat, discuss, throughout your questions, um, express yourself. Feel free, safe place, unless it's not. That happens too. But no, seriously, we're gonna have fun. We're talking about sweetening jars. We're gonna talk about personal concerns and if they make things easier or can they possibly make things a little more challenging. And then we're gonna be talking about uh, working with someone's nature versus going against it. But before we talk about all of that shit, we're gonna rant. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna bitch. We're gonna enjoy. Um, And if we something that we say that we rant, if you want to express yourself on that, feel free. Open space. You're free to have your own opinion. Um, so, I guess the first thing that I want to express and share, something that I've noticed a lot lately, just within my own experience and what I've been seeing when people come to me, as well as noticing how people are interacting with each other and stuff like that. All right, okay, so it is honestly the lack of personal investment into one's craft. And I know that we talk about this a lot, but again, like I said on a different live feed, we will keep talking about the same shit in different ways until we see progress. And it's not like we're, above everyone else or whatnot, but it's like people come here, they might not see a video, they need to experience it, and you might need to tackle it a certain way in order for it to finally click. Um, the lack of personal investment in one's craft is definitely a very not so. It just sucks because people lately just don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing, and yeah. Before I go on a little more ranty rant, what do you feel about that, Miss Melissa?
Well, there are a lot of people out there spreading a lot of misinformation. And to me, the main source of the misinformation is the fact that they have no experience whatsoever. It's like, well, I've read all this stuff, and so therefore this must be true. And you are like, well, okay, they'll gripe about how a particular spell is being presented, and you'll say, okay, well, what would you do? Oh, well, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm just like, okay, well, what have you done? Well, not really anything. Okay, then why do you think it must be this way? If you don't have experience and you haven't done anything, stop telling people they're doing it wrong. It's such a huge pet peeve of mine for someone to do that,
Right.
because it's frustrating. And other people who don't know anything, who are watching the conversation, participating in the conversation. Right. There was a fly, y'all. Um, they'll take this person's word as truth because they're like, oh, these are experience witches talking here. And it's like, oh, no, actually, no. It's not all experience witches talking here. And don't take people's, words at anything more than face value, because they may or may not have any experience whatsoever.
Right.
And it's infuriating.
Well,
So
that that makes me think of a few things that actually happened today, and it really is a challenging thing. It's great when we can interact with people who share a common belief or interest, but at the same time, everyone's an expert, right? So that's when it becomes challenging. Although the frustrating thing for me is when, like you said, when people take things at face value, even shit we say, research it, discover for yourself, um, find what you think. But I noticed that when you start asking people, someone will ask like, okay, well, this is what is happening to me. This is what I'm going through. What do you think? Or what does this mean? And so you'll have a lot of people who will tell them exactly what that's supposed to mean, supposedly. And then, I'll respond and I'll ask questions. I'm like, well, what does this, let's say, what does this symbolism represent to you? The fact that it's happening so often, what does that, mean to you? And when you're experiencing this situation, these things, how does that feel? What's your awareness? What's going on? That's something very important. You have to, and this is what I feel. Is better when you guide someone to finding their own answers, because what I associate with a specific type of bone may not be the same thing that Melissa might utilize it for. And so we have our own different like witchy databases. It does have a very distinct foundation. There's commonalities there, but in our own experience, we have to find what it means to us, because it's speaking to us in our own language. And people just want to be told what to do. They want to be told what to believe. They want to be told how. They want to be told everything. And when you're being told something, it takes your power away. It takes your experience away. When I'm telling you what to do, how to do it, when to breathe, when not to breathe, when I'm telling you all of this, I am living your life. I'm controlling you. But when you are being guided to explore your own, internal dialogue, your own internal experiences, as well as your outward experience, when you're guided, you're being given the opportunity to find your witchy self, to find what it means for you, and that is taking your power back. So it bothers me when I see so many people. It bothers me when I see so many people just like matter of factly. It froze. That sucks.
Oh damn!
Sorry. Well, did it freeze over here? Sorry, y'all. Okay, sorry. That's weird. But
so yay.
Internet's all fucked up, y'all. Sorry, it's not frozen on our side, but anyways, it's just so unfortunate that we are trained to want to know what people are telling us more so than what we know internally. It's good to seek guidance. It's good to seek, outside help, but you also have to, bring it back home and do your own shit.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, I can tell you all day long about my experiences. And I usually do like to relay like, okay, well, this was my experience. But at the same time, my experiences may not be your experience. The way I do things will resonate with me, and it might resonate with someone who also perceives things similarly to me, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be the same way for you, and it also doesn't mean that what you're doing is necessarily wrong. It's just that we are each individuals and we all perceive things very differently. So guidance is wonderful, and asking, like Michael said, asking people for help is totally fine, but make sure that you also experience things for yourself. Do cast your spells, do stuff.
Right.
Pay to learn. Just do stuff, people. Read books, research, but practice. Cast a spell. Take a spell directly from a book if you want. See how that works. Then change it up later on if it doesn't work that well. I mean, you don't have to change everything up because it wasn't created by you. And it's kind of a good idea to practice casting spells that are just written for you just to see what will happen. You know, they might be a better spell writer than you. You know, and there's times I've made blocks and I'm like, I don't even know what to do. And so I will take a spell that has been written and just do it. Because that happens. People have blocks and sometimes your brain doesn't want to work. So there's nothing wrong with taking things directly from a book. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but do it. You know, actually do it and understand how spells work. I mean, there is like this major issue with people not understanding how spell casting actually works. Lore and wishing. It is action, it is movement. You have to raise power. And I didn't realize how challenging it was, and maybe it's something that's not expressed enough in books. You know, I don't know, but raising power seems to be kind of an issue. Questions about it, and or just the lack of knowledge of it. You know, doing these things. It's all the ingredients in the world aren't going to do anything. It's like if you have a whole bunch of ingredients, they're each little fuses. Okay, right. They're each fuses that you've lined up, and until you raise energy, those fuses don't go to anything. You're just lighting a fuse to nothing.
Right.
But once you raise energy, that's my daughter. Sorry. She's watching something there.
That's perfect.
She's watching something in there. Sorry. But anyway, so yeah, once you raise that power, those ingredients now are connected to something. They're now connected to that power. So they are catalysts in helping you produce and execute that power.
Right.
So if you're not raising energy and you're just lighting candles and wishing, you're still not casting.
Right.
I just don't know how to say that in any other way.
And that's definitely something that we should do another, like a separate show on. And the information that we discuss, you know, after our next aspect of our rants a little bit, the things that we discussed tonight, the sweetening jar, those are aspects of helping you cast as well. We'll, you know, share on how to imbue that and raise that energy for that. So these are things that you can take and add to your own, you know, knowledge base if it's something you don't already know, or just, you know, practice more. Another thing that I want to express before we move on is your craft is not always going to be some heightened awareness, like this euphoric experience. It's not going to be this like cosmic, oh my god, orgasm. It's not going to be like that 24/7 or every time you practice. It's a lot like when I was working out constantly. It's a lot like when you build muscle or you exercise, you get that, you know, that high from exercising, but you also build a tolerance. And so you have to push yourself more. And so you don't really feel the same way you initially felt. Sometimes you feel, you know, like shit. And then as you progress, you feel a little better. You get this like very euphoric experience. But then you realize like this is just a part of the process. So it's not always like that. And so in your craft, it's not always going to be like that. So you're not going to have this divine intervention all the time. So when you express yourself, like I'm not going to say that your experience is invalid, but if every little experience that you have is like this earth-shattering, like mind-blowing thing, that's also like a sign where you need to take a little step back, maybe discern a little bit. Are you having these experiences, like legit experiences, or are you kind of like meditating and like guided visualization? Are you creating that in your head and having that as an experience? Because those are both valid experiences, but they're very different. Legit experience, you know, actual connection with the divine versus imagery, visualization. connection through that sort of modality. That's different. So you have to be aware that it's not always going to be extreme and intense.
Right, exactly. I mean, sometimes you will cast a spell and just sit there like, is that all? Did I even do anything? I mean, yes, you'll feel the raising of energy and everything, but it's just not that, oh my God, not that, wow, this is powerful. Sometimes it's just like, wow, that felt sort of like a dud, and that doesn't mean it won't work. It can very well work. In fact, a lot of times those are the ones that work the best for some reason, for me anyway, but it's not always this earth, like Michael says, it's not always this earth shattering thing. It's not always, you don't always feel like you've just had this major spiritual like enlightenment. You're not always going to be in tune with the cosmos. You are going to have days where you're totally out of whack, where it seems like you're just yelling into the void and hearing nothing back. And then 3 days later, you're watching TV and get this bam moment, it was like, oh shit, that's that. Okay, I get your message now. Sometimes it's so subtle, you really have to be paying attention. Right. And if you don't pay attention, you miss it, and then you miss that bit of information that you could have had, and then you'll look back, a month later and be like, oh, shit, that's what they were talking about. So it varies. It's not always this just amazing thing. And sometimes it's a really crappy thing. Sometimes you're put through shit just to show you that, hey, some things you just have to learn the hard way.
Right.
So it's different, and it's not always wonderful. And especially, I have noticed, if you're actively avoiding things, that's when you really get a kick in the ass.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Very, very true. Yeah.
That's so, yeah, it's not always amazing.
Well, that's, before we start, it's just, that's a thought process, a thought pattern, a belief that I feel like a lot of us, need to shed at the beginning, or when we, are made aware of it, is that these experiences are going to be every which way. Witchcraft and the way we filter them are going to be life. And life is up, down, extreme, not so extreme. So we have to take that assumption that every time we practice or cast, it's going to be intense and lovely. We need to take that and we need to obliterate it. We need to get rid of it, because it's going to prevent us from actually stepping into our authentic expression in our experience, and allowing each aspect and each intensity, each level of intensity, to influence us and bless us. So we have to really be aware of that. Okay, so sweetening jars, sweetening work. The reason that we sort of discussed this and decided to have a show on this is because we didn't really realize, and again, I hope this doesn't make us sound some type of way, but oh well. But we didn't really realize how many people don't really know what it is. And to me, it's like, okay, I hear sweetening. I know what it is because I read, I talk to people, and all that. But from a witchy standpoint, I think sweetening, that's sweet. It's like sugar. It's gonna sweeten someone's disposition. It's gonna make me favorable, or my whatever favorable over something else. It's gonna give me the goods. That's how I would assume. But there's a lot of people who just don't know. And for those who don't know, okay, now we have a discussion. So let's talk about sweetening jars, sweetening work. Miss Melissa, what say you?
I love sweetening jars. And I can understand why some people may not know what it is necessarily. It has a lot of roots in folk magic. So if you are, practice high ceremonial magic and things like that, then you may not have heard of it, even though to me, yeah, like Michael said, it's kind of self-explanatory. But sweetening jars work by sweetening someone to whatever, or sweetening money, or sweetening an item, an object, to be in your favor. So if I have a cranky boss and I want them to not be cranky towards me, I will make a sweetening jar for them. And depending on what you use, it depends on how fast that sweetening is going to work. Sugar works super fast. The thing about sugar working super fast is that it's also over very quickly. So if you want just sort of instant results, sugar water is excellent for that, or just sugar in general. Honey takes a little time, but it lasts longer. Molasses takes a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that is like a really long-lasting situation too. So that would be like sweetening. I would say something like molasses for sweetening, like in-laws, especially if you don't see them that often. You know, you're only going to see them around the holidays. Maybe start one right after the holidays, and then by the time the holidays roll around, you know, you will see results. But so it depends. You know, it really depends on what you can use. Syrup. You can use anything that's sweet. You know, in hoodoo, cinnamon is used for money because it sweetens money, even though cinnamon isn't sweet.
Right.
But it also speeds things up. So I always add sugar to my cinnamon when I work with money to, you know, sweeten those things and to come to me quickly, especially if I need fast cash. Or I'll use honey if I want it to be something a little bit more permanent. But yeah, sweetening jars are just that. You're sweetening something or someone to you. You know, you can use petition papers, you can use personal concerns, you can use anything. You know, to me, some of the most effective sweetening jars I have done were with a picture and the name of the person in the bottom of the jar.
Yep.
To be extremely oh yes, it doesn't have to be, you know, something that's extremely complex. You can add herbs to sort of tailor. Oh yes, horny goat weed. But you can use herbs to tailor the way you want them to be sweetened. You know, if you want their personality, their presentation towards you, the way they speak to you, you can add specific herbs to that sweetening jar in order to do that. If you want, you know, your relationship hasn't been that great and you want to sweeten your relationship, especially if you want to sweeten things in the love and sex department,
Yeah.
horny goat weed would be really good for that, actually. So yeah, I mean, they can be used for a lot of things. I would be very hesitant to use a sweetening jar in a curse.
Yeah.
Just saying, because that is just there's way too much of the sweet to counteract with the cursing aspect.
Right.
So, you know, even a small sweetening jar is going to, it's just not going to come out the way you think. It's just not. So I would be very hesitant. Sour jars, on the other hand, work wonderfully well for cursing. But that's a whole nother topic.
Like, we'll talk about that in a different. So yeah, sweetening work. Y'all, let's have some fun. I know there's a few of you watching, so utilize the chat. Give us some situations which you would want to create a sweetening jar, and let's see. Me and Melissa will, you know, have fun and create scenarios, like different things you can have, you know, utilize a sweetening jar for. So throw us some shit, y'all. Well, not literally, because just have fun. What should we sweeten?
Sweetening everyone around the person. That's a lot of work.
No, I wouldn't do that. And that's kind of goes with my weak witchcraft post on passive aggressive witchcraft. because when you seek to create, sweeten something around everything else, that's a lot of work, a lot of energy expressed, and so you are going a long ways around something you can directly get to.
Not only that, but you're sweetening everyone around this person, so they're going to be sweet to that person. So even if you don't want them to be, because you're sweetening their nature, you can want specific, but the reason it works is because it sweetens them as a whole. It sweetens them. So I'm not sure why you'd want to do that necessarily.
The only okay, this is so petty too. The only reason I can think of anything like that is like if we're like freaking like Mean Girls, Mean Girl in it, and we're trying to do popularity, and we want to sweeten like all the bitches to us, but leave that one bitch out. But again, to me, that's just a lot of energy. That's a lot of work. It would depend, I guess, on what you need it for. But I feel like there's always going to be something easier to do when it comes to sweetening work. You can use, obviously, little jars, mason jars. You can use boxes, depending on what you're going to put in the box. Like if you're using all dry shit, you can use like little cute boxes in the shape of whatever, like a heart, a coffin. There's just, depending on what you need it for, because coffins don't just, they're not just used for malediction. You can use it for a lot of different things. So you can have fun with it. Get little boxes and use them to sweeten. But let's see. Sugarcane. I've used sugarcane in sweetening work, and I actually like sugarcane for that, just because like the actual shit, I'll put that in like a jar with some water. I feel like for me that helps to sweeten, but also last longer, because it's not like it won't burn out super fast.
Right.
So
like granulated sugar, because we know how fast that dissolves.
Right.
But sugar cane takes a lot more. And
that shit is like resilient. Like that shit is like, that shit's intense. So that would be like really good for like a prolonged working, or something that you want to start off really good and eventually it just gets sweeter and sweeter. But you're also, if you're working with sugarcane, it can also protect the work as well.
Right.
So
Faye, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, Faye was wanting to know how to sweeten, making a sweetening jar to find a good job. Those are fun. Those are a lot of fun, especially if you have a specific job in mind. But even if you don't, you can write out a petition paper. Put what you want in about the job. Specifics. I want weekends off. I want such and such amount of pay. I want, and put down your specifics, put it in the jar. I always start with petition paper at the bottom of the jar.
Right.
Add your, I would do a mixture, honestly, of sugar and honey, because sugar at the bottom and then pour honey on top, because the sugar will work fast. And I would probably mix stuff like cinnamon, right. Money, success. Cinnamon will actually attract success to you. You can also use mint. Mint is good about keeping your money fresh and keeping things fresh. And you're looking for a new job. My cat is being weird, y'all. And so you can use mint. You can even use sage to raise the vibrations and for something more positive. Sage also works well with like money and searching and success rather. I'm sorry, searching. But anyway, and then you add honey, and you can even add a little bit of rice for good luck, chamomile. Oh my gosh, there's a ton.
If you do have like a specific job that you want, go to that place, buy something if you can, and use the receipt as your petition paper if you can get dirt from that location. But if it's like a general job, just take like take your resume and use that as like your petition paper, and do as Melissa instructed and write all your shit on there. If you have your resume on as your petition, that is sweetening all that shit to you. That's your resume. It's to make it look good. You can even work with, who said it? Oh shit. Someone, well, no. Oh, she said apple peels. Never mind. You could work with orange peels to put in your, sweetening work, because the orange helps to open the way, because with the color orange and such, we use that to kind of pave the way, open the way, get rid of like blocks. Orange also stimulates, so it'll kind of like get things moving, and it'll help create the flow of energy in which your casting, your sweetening jar is being produced. So it will open all this energy to you, so you can call your job to you. There's like so many different things, and like with your jars, you can put like sigils like on the bottom.
Yes.
Right there, like sigils, boom, boom, pow. You could even, put one down here at the base. There's so much you can do and should do, but you don't have to overdo. Just do something what you're called to do. But finding a job is great, and you can even get possibly a jar from a crossroads, because that's like where you want to. You're at a crossroads. Crossroads is very powerful, but it also has guidance and direction. You just have to state that, like, you're looking for a job. Crossroads will actually help you find it.
Right, exactly. And also, in order to activate your sweetening jar, you're burning candles on top of it.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. that
actually kind of fits, really.
Yeah, it does.
It really does.
But yeah, so you're burning candles on top of it. If I was going to activate that, I would use an orange and green candle. Just a small chime candles. Those are fairly cheap and inexpensive to find or buy, and they're easy to find. So I would use something like that, and you can, anoint your candles. I personally like to, yes, I love those. I personally like to anoint my candles with blessing oil whenever it comes to sweetening jars, because I'm just kind of blessing everything, and you can use different herbs. You can use you can save some of whatever herb mixture you put in the sweetening jar for your candles. I do that a lot, just kind of tie everything in really nice. And the wonderful thing about sweetening jars is they last a long time. You just keep putting candles on them. Keep that energy flowing. Keep putting candles on them. Keep using them. So sweetening jar, one jar can last for a very long time. You don't have to get rid of it anytime soon.
No. Yes, I like it. Very good. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little, inspiration. Let's see. To get a loan. Well, working to get a loan, I feel like for me it'd have to be a little more specific. So if you're applying for a loan, then you'd want to sort of sweeten your application. So if you're, going to the bank or whatnot, then you would sweeten, if you're taking something there, you would sweeten that nature, or you'd sweeten the person you're working with. What's the name for them? They're like the loan peoples. There's a specific name. Anyways, you would work with them, you'd sweeten them. And I would probably use, what happened? I do. A $2 bill.
Mm-hmm.
Money calls money. You need money, you kind of got to use money. That's kind of how I feel. Like, if you need money, if you're calling money, then you have to incorporate some sort of like money or something that represents money into your work. So I would utilize like a $2 bill, because to me that's always like, it brings luck. Its energy is associated with, calling, luck, good, good fortune. And so I'd probably use that. I'd probably do like a 5 spot on the $2 bill, and use that as my petition. And this would probably be an all dry sweetening jar, just because I would utilize eventually that $2 bill again in attraction for money. I keep that in my wallet.
Right.
So,
Well, you can also put if you don't want to use all dry, you can also put it just underneath the jar.
yeah, for sure.
You know, I wouldn't put it in honey because that's going to be a bitch.
No. No, but I would like put it in a jar with my petition on it, and then I would, layer it with different things. I actually would put pink Himalayan salt inside my jar, even though it's not really sweet. But pink salt is actually a purifier. It actually has really good benefits, and it cleanses so much. So our beliefs around money tend to be very negative. And going for a loan, to apply for a loan, there's a lot of like fear energy around that. There's a lot of like apprehensive energy, and so to help with anxiety, to help with clearing that sort of that vibe, that essence, that energy, I would utilize pink salt to help with that. So you put your petition in there in a $2 bill, and then the pink salt to help alleviate that tension. And then I would layer it with like white sugar, brown sugar, and even powdered sugar. Just because I like the feel, the fluffiness, and the sweetness of powdered sugar, and layer that in there, and keep working it until I get my my shit. And then once you've got your loan, I would actually take the $2 bill out and put it in my wallet or purse and keep that as like a remembrance. You can even frame it if you want. But keep that as a remembrance to help produce that energy again. But yeah, that's kind of like what I would do.
Yeah. And, dirt from the bank, your loan officer's card, sure, include that, because it's usually up to the actual loan officer more than it is the bank. So you definitely want to get whatever kind of representation from them you can. Most of them have cards. So, so definitely do that. And I think someone asked about what to do if a photo. I mean, a photo would be great. Someone asked about keeping the wax on the side of the jar lid. It doesn't. I mean, once I create my jar, I don't ever open it again usually, because I've already got everything in there that I want and need. So to me, it doesn't really matter if the wax, collects on the jar, because it's an ongoing work. This isn't something that's just like a 3-day spell or a 7-day spell. This is like, you can keep, I've kept honey jars for a year. You can actually, especially if you use honey never goes bad. So it literally does not go bad. So you could keep it for 100 years if you wanted, and nothing bad would happen. So it doesn't spoil.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I never open it again, and I usually keep them going on for a good long time. And once it's done, if I'm finished with that, I bury it usually at a crossroads, and in a way that kind of still keeps it going, still keeps that energy present. So it's really up to you, but yeah, it doesn't bother me for wax.
Amy B, do you need a photo, or does just adding their name on the jar work? You don't need a photo. A photo helps. You can use their name. But in the day and age of technology, Facebook stalking, Instagram stalking, whatever, you can get it. You can get a photo. If you can, do it. If not, use their name.
Right.
So it just depends. And you can be crafty about it. If that you have their writing, use their writing.
Yeah. And that kind of goes in really well to actually using personal concerns in sweetening jars. So if you do use hair, nail clippings, whatever, spit, whatever you get from the person, and you're trying to sweeten someone, sometimes personal concerns can trip you up a little bit, especially if that someone is naturally like super cranky and bitchy. Actually having their essence in there can make it a little bit more challenging.
Right.
Because you're working against their nature, which I guess this kind of ties into the whole rest of everything. Yeah. But you're working against their nature, Right. So sometimes it's better just to write their name or have a photo, or something that's not so attached to them.
Right, exactly.
Their nature isn't imbued in. That way you can influence their nature without their actual nature getting in the way.
Wow, that was a tongue twister, y'all.
It was.
And that's true. And you guys have so many great questions. If we can't get to them, please join the group or comment on this video afterwards with your questions, and we will do our best to answer every one of them. So yeah, if we don't get to them tonight, you can use the group talk there, or just comment on this video afterwards, and we will do our best again to respond to you. We're not ignoring you. It's just that's a lot of shit going on, and we have to get to some other stuff too. But yes, like I have a personal experience with working, with a sweetening work, which it worked really good, and it worked really, really good for a very specific time. It was supposed to be a little longer than what it was, but the individual that I had in my sweetening jar is very, very sour and very, very bitter, and their nature is to really go against being sweet kind of to me or to people like me. And so it works, but their energy their energy, very specific, it burned through all of that sweet and turned that sweet into sour. If and that's kind of the thing you have to realize as well, because when we're working our craft, when we're working with energy, yes, we are the one in control. Yes, we are the witch. Yes, we cast and project and whatnot. But when you're pulling someone else's essence in, when you're working with other forces, especially a human in a sense, you're taking their energy and applying it to your work. So you're having sort of dominance over them. Their energy still is its energy, so it goes through your work, and you have to be aware of that. So that's kind of like what we want to express on that, which does segue perfectly into working. Oh wait, did we really talk about? Yeah, personal concerns, like Melissa already expressed that we did. Personal concerns being sometimes good, sometimes bad, but that does segue into working with someone's nature versus working against their nature. And what that means is kind of what I expressed. Working with their nature is if they're like a fucking bastard of a person, they're very sour. You might want to work that route, figure out like a loophole, sort of doing that sort of working versus a sweetening, because if you sweeten and you work against their nature, you might have like short-lived experiences. And this is kind of where you kind of have to know yourself as a witch too, because if you do this and then it doesn't last as long as you thought, you kind of think, what did I do wrong? Was it me? Sometimes it could be, sometimes it might be. But if you're working against their nature, it actually just might be the fact that they're so fucking pissed off and, bullheaded or whatever, that your work was temporary and very temporary because they're fighting against it.
Right, exactly. And just to, so we kind of wrap up the sweetening jar section. Someone said doing a sweetening jar for a garage sale. I wouldn't waste my time with that. A garage sale doesn't last very long. Sweetening jars are usually for a longer, work. Honestly, you would have a lot more luck with that by doing like charms, enchanting how you advertise your posters and things like that with certain herbs and crystals than doing a sweetening jar. To me, a sweetening jar would be, it just is a, I don't know.
It's a lengthy process for something that's short-lived. You get your hands, you put so much energy into it because it is a little longer process for something that might last a day or two.
Right, exactly. So to me, just enchanting like your items, having a lot of citrine, hanging about wherever you're doing your garage sale.
Use-
Obviously not where someone will pick it up and buy it, but having it in your pocket, things like that. You can just do little small enchantments to help with something like that.
well, yeah.
As far as sweetening for health,
Not if you buy a
you
bundle.
could, right? I mean, yeah, exactly. You could, but to me, there's just better things to do for health than a sweetening jar, because sweet stuff and health to me just don't go good together.
No.
Sweet things usually aren't good for us in the long run.
I mean, if you would
Um,
like sweeten, if you have health issues and like people aren't listening to you, like doctors and stuff, you can sweeten that situation. But if you're like talking about sweetening to be healthy, then no, that kind of defeats the purpose. You could find something better to work.
right. I mean, and to me, because I mean, you don't want diabetes, and I just feel like if you use honey jar for health, you're going to wind up doing yourself diabetes or becoming overweight, or something like that. To me, it's just one of those things that you have to think about what you're using in a spell and how that item translates both in the physical and the spiritual.
Right.
So that's why I wouldn't use it for health. But and I think someone else asked about putting the paper in a plastic bag. When you're doing petitions for a sweetening jar, it goes in the jar. The honey goes in.
Yeah, it needs direct contact, because if you have it in a paper, like that would be good for like cursing, which we're not talking about tonight. But if you have it in a paper, like it separates, it keeps your petition separate from the work. So you want the work to hit your petition. You want it to be intermixed. So its energy, its influence, its correspondence touches your petition. Therefore, it activates it and it sends it out.
This fly is killing me. It's getting on my nerves. I'm just like, Ugh.
I saw you get across for a bit. Sure did.
It's because we're talking about all this sweet stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so, always think about what you're using and why you're using it and what it's for. And to me, that is going to give you really good clues on if it's going to be, something that will have a positive effect or a bad effect. Kind of like working with one's nature. If you Okay, kind of like the whole Trump binding that happened here a while back. We had a discussion about this in the group. If you're in the Deviant Witchery closed group, you probably saw it. But, to me, I feel like that worked really well because it went with his own nature.
Right.
Because he, is an idiot. And so binding him to be his own folly, his own worst enemy for everything to fail, that works because you're working with his nature because he's stupid. He has done a lot of really dumb things, and he's a hateful person,
Right.
and he's all about him. So when you focus a spell on someone like that, a narcissistic person who's all about themselves, and you use their own nature to make them their worst enemy, it works really, really well. Because not only are you working with their nature, but their nature is actually empowering the spell. So when they keep screwing up and keep, acting the way they act, then it just keeps that spell's momentum going.
Right.
So consider that when you cast a spell, especially if you're using a person as a target.
Well, and that actually is perfect for what I'm about to say. And Andre, may I use sweetening jars to the politicians in Brazil that are all involved in corruption to stop robbing our country? Well, you can, Absolutely, because that's a lot of shit right there. Like that, it's a lengthy process. I find you can definitely do that, but you have to realize, like when it comes to politics, I find that group magic, a group effort, works better because there is so much involved in politics. Like one individual, while you can make an influence or create an influence, it's going to take so much energy, so much time that it's better to do something like that. That's like a group work. So if you had a lot of people who invested their time to create that sweetening jar and you put that energy, or you each had one and you linked it up and you sent that out, I think that would be better suited than just one person doing a sweetening jar. If you're going to do a sweetening jar in regards to the politics, start somewhere small. Start in your very, very like your own community and do that. That's a little easier than something that's a little wider.
Right, right. And also you have to think about, too, the nature of a politician. Your local politician is more worried about what you think on their level because they're a local politician. But when it comes to state politicians or country politicians, they're worried about what a whole group of people think,
Right.
even if they may not act that way. Especially if you are in a republic or a democracy, because you will vote for them as representatives. So that's why it would be a lot more effective for a group to cast, because again, we're looking at the nature of the target, the nature of the thing, and politicians are focused on group mentality. They're not really so much focused on individualized people, where your local politicians, though, are. One voice is just as loud to them usually, especially
Right.
if it's a smaller town. One voice is usually just as loud as 10 voices. So that's
Yeah.
why it would be way more effective
And if you
that
think about
way.
it, it's like you start smaller, and your local have influence on a little wider scale because they have connections. So you start smaller, you get there, and then as you influence your local, your smaller group, you kind of have control in a sense. You have a certain control or sway, and so they start to think and align with your own, and then they bring that to the outer group in a sense. So that's
Right.
something to also consider. And I don't know what the 17 witchy questions is. If you want us to do that, comment on this video when it uploads and like let us know what it is, and we might do a video for that for sure. We're not opposed to it. I don't really know what it is though, so.
But yeah, so but working with the nature of something is so much easier. That's why, in fact, we use correspondences. We use correspondences like the elements. And whenever you're working, if you want to burn something out, if you want to burn out an obstacle or burn away a blockage, you're not going to work with earth. You're going to work with fire because it is connected to, I guess you could work with earth, but it would be a long roundabout way when it's so much easier just to be like, hey, I'm going to work with fire because I want to remove and burn out these blockages. You might work with water even, but if you want it to happen quickly and have a very finite, get out of my way, because water might move things, but water's gone, where
Right.
fire will obliterate it. So that's why it is really important to think about the nature of whatever it is you're casting for. So you have the right correspondences. So you work with the right elements, you work with the right herbs, you work with the right crystals to get things going. It's so much easier to work with the flow than against the grain.
Right. Let's see. And y'all, I can't talk, y'all, but let's try this again. If y'all want to throw anything else out there, if you have any more questions on or situations which you want to use a sweetening jar and you want us to kind of like comment on, throw them out here. We will. I think it was a Candace. Like, what about doing sweetening work to sell a business? I would, if you're looking to attract people or if you have, buyers interested, absolutely sweeten their, disposition towards you, like sweeten their essence and definitely do that. Like Melissa expressed earlier, if there's more than one person interested in buying, get their information. If they have a business card, do it all at once. I wouldn't do it separate. I would put everyone that's interested in buying in one jar, and kind of create where the biggest bidder, they'll have to fight over it. They'll have to someone's going to get it, and they're all going to realize like, oh, there's more people interested, so I better hop on this quick. And you can use like, I use very little, because when you sweeten, you want to sweeten, but I use very little, like chili pepper or cayenne pepper, just a pinch, to kind of put a fire under them,
right?
And get them like, oh, I want this, and then do your sugar. If you need it fast, you want to use sugar that's going to move a little faster, and then
definitely.
So yeah, you can definitely do that. Just apply it, get creative, and have fun with it. Another really good way for people who are working with other people or trying to, sweeten their energy is if you are physically in contact with them, shake their hand and make eye contact. A lot of people don't make eye contact, but as witch, you have power, you have influence. So shake their hand, take their hand in yours, shake it firmly. Don't fucking like flimsy fucking shake. That's stupid. Don't do it. Firm. And look them in the eye. It is. It's like, oh no, you want like a good handshake. So shake their hand, stare into their eyes, and program like, you want this. You want this business, not this. Unless you. But the minute that they leave, throw that energy, wipe it off into your jar, or wipe it off and put it in, like, let's say a jar that has alcohol like vodka, and put that in there. But wipe the energy off, put it there, store it, so when you do your sweetening work, you have that essence, you have that connection to that individual, which then you can create and cast and bring to you. All right.
I would keep you don't have to keep the sweetening jar, Faye. She asked if for your job, after you got the job, would you keep it? You don't have to, but I would personally, because things go wrong all the time. You don't have to keep it active. You can let it kind of go dormant until you need it. Shake it up. You don't have to keep putting candles on it, but put it in a closet. Shake it up, put it on. In fact, honestly, I would put it, if you have a prosperity altar, I would leave it on my prosperity altar and shake it up every once in a while to keep that sweet stuff flowing, keep it moving, keep happiness in your job. Eventually, if you wanted to, after a couple of years, you could maybe possibly bury it on the property. And that would make it, especially if you really enjoy the job, that would kind of make it permanent. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. And with jars, okay, that's fine. With jars, something that we didn't really discuss is if you notice things are going a little slower or whatever, you can shake it. That doesn't look right. You can shake it. I don't care. Anyways, shake it. Or tap it. Get that shit moving. Wake it up. Sometimes, sugar or whatever, it solidifies. Or, especially honey. But with honey, sometimes what you can do, especially if it's like a full-on fucking honey jar, if it's really, really slow, just stick it in warm water and get it moving again. So it softens the honey and it gets it moving. And then just shake. Tap, tap, tap. Don't break. But have fun with it and make sure that, it's such common sense, shake it up to move it. You're shaking things up. You got to get things going. You got to rev that energy up. Make it pay attention. Like, hey, I'm here. But like you said, for prosperity or job shit or whatever, I would keep it. And another thing, there's so many more questions. Oh my God. Another thing I would express is have fun with your work. So if you are doing a sweetening jar, let's say for your relationship, to keep things spicy, to keep things fun, to keep aware of how you feel. Create a love altar. Utilize colors that are sacred to love as well as sacred to you and your partner. Have fun with it. Adorn it with things are things that remind you of each other, things that you appreciate about each other, things that keep you in each other's minds, and create a sort of grid on your altar, and then put your jar at the center. But just have fun with it. Make it artistic, entertaining.
Right. And you totally can dominate with a sweetening jar. I mean, you're already dominating because you're influencing them and how they feel right now. You know, using that. That is pretty dominant. You can add things to dominate with a sweetening jar. Honestly, to me, there's better ways. So, but you definitely can, but there's better ways to unless you're like wanting them to be like soft and sweet and submissive, and even then I can think of a lot better ways to use to do that without using a sweetening jar. As far as a sweetening jar for yourself, again, I feel like you fall into those same pitfalls of making you a diabetic or fat, unhealthy.
I guess if it's like to help you deal with like a personality, like if there's something about you that you're struggling with accepting, you could possibly like work a sweetening jar for you if you feel comfortable doing that.
You could, but I just feel like that would cover up what you actually need to face, and in the long run, it's not going to be good for you.
Yeah. Because when you're sweetening yourself up to it, it's like you don't really need to sweeten yourself up to yourself. You kind of need to be open with what's going on with yourself and facing that friction, that struggle. So instead of like, oh, I'm okay with this, you're not okay with this, face that, figure that out, and work through that. Sweetening would be a temporary thing. You might need that. Like, you might need that temporary situation. But then again, we said sweetening jars aren't necessarily for something that's going to be very temporary.
Right. This is more long term. Yeah. I mean, you can use sugar jars, and those can be temporary. But even then, I mean, for yourself, it's kind of, I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of counterproductive, mainly because you're sweetening yourself to an idea that you obviously aren't accepting.
Right.
So eventually, your own nature and working with your own nature is going to combat that, and you're not going to accept it, and you can actually hit a pretty low, like if you've ever been on a sugar rush and then come off of it, it's going to suck.
I would actually do divination.
Yeah.
Tarot cards to help process through something like that. Like for me, when there's something going on myself, I didn't really cast on myself for that reason. I utilized my cards or a form of divination to kind of like process my own inner shit, my emotions, the outer world, how it influences me. I would utilize like divination to work through that. So yeah.
But yeah, it's always tricky when it involves yourself and ideas about yourself and casting a spell. You really need to know yourself before you do something.
Okay, well, a self-love jar instead. Yeah, I could see doing a self-love jar, like a spell jar, not necessarily like a sweetening jar.
Right.
That you fill up, like, people get those mason jars, they fill it with like little, notes to themselves, like lovey-dovey thingies. I would do that probably instead. So if there's something like you're facing that you don't want to face, but it's like coming up, I would probably take a jar and just like the first thing that pops into your head when you think about it, write that on a piece of paper and put it in that jar. Don't just one thing every day until you feel like you're ready to process. And then you can like maybe put a few, like get some rice and put some essential oils that are good for like acceptance and self-love, and put it in that jar, shake it up for a while, and then go back and read everything you said and like release it or burn the papers, like something like that, versus like a sweetening jar.
Right. Exactly. Oh. Andre says, how can I do jars of sweetened gospel preachers who make sermons against us in their evangelical churches as if all of us were satanic witches? A woman was already stoned. Okay, so I don't know if I would do a sweetening jar in that sense, because, again, you're fighting against that person's nature, and especially evangelicals are very firm in their beliefs. Personally, I would be, if you aren't comfortable with cursing, then obviously don't. But I curse the hell out of that dude. If you are against cursing, you can do something along the lines of shutting them up, making sure their words are heard, ears of their churchgoers, their parishioners. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. Protection spells for witches. There's just a lot of other ways. To me, a sweetening jar for someone who has beliefs that are that firm and that set in stone, is gonna bitch.
Plus, I think you would need something that's going to be a little more speedy and a little more like harsh than sweetening work. And before we go, you probably would need. I would consider using graveyard dirt from a crossroads, as well as dirt from the church that they are at, and allow your creative mind to figure something out. But yeah, we covered sweetening jars as best as we could. Again, if you have more questions when this video uploads, feel free to comment. If you're watching a recording, comment. If you want to discuss this, you don't want to comment on YouTube, we have the group. Comment in the group. But realize, like we expressed as well, personal concerns can make things a little more tricky, especially when you're working against someone's nature. Their essence does, influence the work that you do. And when you're working with someone's nature, then it helps you achieve results faster, and it makes things a little more lengthy. When you're working against their nature, you can, but it also is against their nature, so eventually they return to their dominant state of being. And so it runs its course a little faster.
Yeah, but you really have to keep working that work whenever you're working against nature. When you're working against the natural flow of things, you just have to keep going and keep going and keep going. And sometimes it's totally worth it. But if you're wanting something to happen fast and to happen, quickly, that's not necessarily the way I would go. I would work with their nature. And there's interesting ways you can work with people's nature. If there is a really shitty person and you want to use a souring jar, you can sour them to themselves. You can, there's ways you can finagle and work with something that seems completely opposite of what you're trying to accomplish, if that makes sense. But yeah, it doesn't have to be as direct as say, I want this, and so I'm directly going to cast for this. Sometimes that's just a challenge to do, especially whenever things aren't flowing in that direction. That is why it's a good idea, if you want to establish good prosperity into your home, as something you do repeatedly. It's something you cast for in different ways, good set amount of spells that you cast for repeatedly, because you're constantly working for that. Because there's always going to be things that come, obstacles in your way. That's just the way of the world. There's always going to be things that can hinder you and slow things down. That's why you repeatedly do work like that.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We like that. So again, y'all, I'm dying. Ugh. But hopefully you enjoyed the show, the experience. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. Comment. Connect with us. If you want us to talk about anything specific in the future, just let us know. We are always, taking what you have to say and working with that. And if you'd like us to do another show, maybe on Sweetening Jars, let us know in the comments. Comment and tell us, and maybe give us some ideas. And then whoever watches live will do this again. I like having live feedback. You give us something, and then we can kind of share with you like different tidbits, and we can discuss it. So yeah, it's been fun, but it's hot as fucking hell over here, so it's time to go. But yeah, it's been fun, y'all. So until next time, peace.
Bye.